In 2013, the PS4 arrives, and with it brought a generation of incredible video game titles for us all to enjoy. I think it was a fantastic generation of video games, and for me, it was the very first games console I was able to pick up with my own hard-earned money. So it has a sentimental place in my life when it concerns video games. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Command and Console. My name is Jason. Today we're having a look at my PS4 collection, as well as recommending some titles from the generation. As a whole, it's a generation of games where I've probably played the most in there, really. I think I had a PS4 to begin with. I moved over to Xbox One. Yeah, I thought it was a very good generation. The 8th generation was pretty great. PS4 was the big dog in that generation, I would say. Sold millions of units. But yeah, let's get into my current collection, and I'm going to recommend games as well along the way that you should check out for PS4. I am considering starting a PS4 curated collection list, so we can go and hunt down some games I either never played or that I want to pick up again that I used to have back when I got a PS4 originally. Anyway, let's go on to the collection. So first up, I have Doom 2016. This is the Steelbook edition, and I've got the box for the UAC pack. I didn't actually get this with the game in, it's just I got it for nothing, thankfully. But yeah, the Steelbook has come from the collector's edition, so the Steelbook is pretty cool. Not the biggest fan of Steelbooks, but I think both Doom games gave us some of the best Steelbooks, I think, for video games. So I love how that's got the Revenant there with the Doom logo, almost like DBoss. It's not sticking out, it's like more sunken in. It's pretty great. Yeah, that's cool. On the back, you've got the Revenant there as well. Inside, you've got the Cyber Demon on the booklet, and you've got the disc there. Really nice Steelbook for that. The big selling point for the collector's edition for me was the statue you got with it. And that would be the awesome statue of the Revenant. This is absolutely glorious. I love it to pieces. It's a bit dusty. I need to give it a dust, to be fair, but I digress. It's sitting on my shelf for ages. I kind of neglected it a little bit, but in terms of artistry, this is brilliant. I love the redesign for the Revenant anyway. I think they've brought it up to date really well, really nicely. Even the statue, it's got kind of like a the skin's got this kind of like shiny, kind of gloopy texture to it, where it's obviously just like, you know, kind of like just gross and just, you know, gross and disgusting. But yeah, I love that. It looks awesome. Needs a dust though, guys. Come on, it does. But yeah, big selling point for me. Obviously, I wanted the game anyway, but when they put out this collector's edition, I think it was only like £100 for the collector's edition when it came out. Had to get it with this statue. It's awesome. I've said this all the time, guys, right? If they put out a series of these figures like this on these bases of each of the enemies, I'd be buying them all because they just look great. If you can get the Imp like this, it'd be awesome. If you can get, like, you know, the Pinky Demon would be great. Cyber Demon, all those like this would have been awesome. They missed a trick there, guys. They missed a trick. But yeah, that is the Revenant statue from the Doom 2016 Collector's Edition. Next up, we have Doom Eternal Collector's Edition. I'm really excited about this one because I will argue that Doom Eternal was one of the greatest first-person shooters ever made, period. But it's one of the best games from the 8th generation. And the Steelbook for this is probably the most beautiful Steelbooks I own. I've seen really nice Steelbooks from movies. I've seen quite nice Steelbooks for games, but the Doom Eternal Steelbook is the greatest Steelbook I've ever seen for its design, because it's fucking beautiful. This is it, guys. This is the Steelbook for Doom Eternal. Look at that. The reds, the oranges, the golds. And when you open it up, you get the full scene. Oh mate, it just looks so good, guys. It looks absolutely beautiful. I really hope you're getting that properly on screen there, because I can't see my camera right now. And obviously inside you get the booklet and the disc. There's just something beautiful about the colours on this that I just adore. It really sums up what to expect in the game as well. This game, it takes it up a massive notch from the 2016 Doom. The gunplay and the action is still as visceral as ever, but like they've taken more time to flesh out the lore and really flesh out the story behind the Doomslayer and how he's almost like this feared god figure amongst hell and the demons, and he basically will go, he will stop at nothing to wipe out the demon scourge once and for all. Absolutely great game. The story is still actually not really that relevant, but it's actually a lot more fleshed out and much more interesting to follow. Finding like audio logs and stuff is really interesting in this one, but it's all about the rhythmic based shooting. You know, you've got to weigh up what you need. You need health, or you've got to glory kill some people. You need some bloody ammo. You need to chain someone to death. There's a really cool kind of micromanagement in Doom Eternal that people don't really kind of talk about that much. There's a lot of kind of, like I said, I call it kind of almost like a rhythm puzzle game in that, in very, very subtly, because you've got to make these micro decisions where it's just like, right, I've got no ammo, let's fucking chainsaw a guy and stuff like that. This game is brutal fun. It's awesome. The DLC for it as well was really good. Added a bit more extra challenge to it as well. But yeah, Doom Eternal is one of my favourite games of this generation. And yeah, one of the best games on the PS4 in my opinion. And this collector's edition is absolutely amazing. Speaking about the collector's edition, I haven't shown you the main piece from the collector's edition. Let's have a look. So yes, the Doom Eternal's collector's edition came with this awesome Doom Slayer helmet. Yep, I love this. It's so good. It makes my head look massive though. It's insane. But yeah, it's so cool. I love it. Let's get on to the next game. Doom Eternal, guys. Rip and tear. Rip and tear. Next game in the collection is the 2018 God of War reboot. I'll be honest, I have not played this one. I saw a lot of the pre-release stuff, so by the time the game came out, I felt like I saw a lot of it. I know I'm probably completely wrong there, I probably am, but I'm guessing when you follow a game so much during pre-release, by the time I got it in my hands, I felt a bit like I've seen a bit too much. I think I saw a bit too much of the game, and it kind of like burnt me out on even wanting to play it. But I've had this since it came out. I haven't got rid of it, because when the PS5 came out, I knew that it was a perfect chance to give this game a proper go in 4K with the cool enhancements that the PS5 will give it. But that's God of War. The game I picked up fairly recently because I remember getting this at launch. Thought it was a pretty decent game. I got this for £2 in cash converters recently. That is Killzone Shadowfall. I thought to myself, I do plan to get the other Killzone games on PS3, so why not get the fourth game on PS4? I remember this game being pretty fun. It's a very good tech demo for the PS4 back when it came out. A really cool launch title, all things considered. The multiplayer was where it was at for me. I thought the multiplayer was loads of fun and a cool diversion away from Call of Duty. It was something a bit different, which I really enjoyed. But that's Killzone Shadowfall. Next game is a physical release that I only could have gotten from Play Asia. It was a Asian physical release, but thankfully the case and the artwork and everything in it is in English, which is amazing. One of my favourite games for PS2. It got a remaster on PS4. You've heard me speak about this franchise on my Project PS2 videos on the Mission Warlords. I love this game. I absolutely adore it. When Capcom was still king, such a nice remaster of On the Mission Warlords. It's got a reversible art. It's got like more of the Japanese artwork in there, which I don't really care for that much. So I had to just opt for the original artwork that came out on PS2. Love this game. Great remaster. A lot of people don't really realise this came out physically, but like I said, it only came out in Asian territories. So I was able to grab this on Play Asia as a physical version because it's fucking beautiful. That's On the Mission Warlords. Next up is The Last of Us Remastered, one of the greatest games ever in my opinion. 10 out of 10. I reckon this is going to be one of those games that kind of turns into the Skyrim scenario where it just keeps getting re-released over and over. So we got the original Last of Us on PS3. Fantastic. That's when I first played it. That's when I fell in love with it. I loved it. It became one of my favourite games of all time. Top 10 easy. Then we got the remastered version. I had to play it at 60 frames per second. It felt buttery smooth and awesome. And now obviously we got the remake, or they call it a remake on PS5. I only ever see it more so as just like Similar to what this does to the PS3 version, the PS5 does that exact same thing for this version. So, you know, better, you know, higher res textures, 4K play, 60 frames per second, and stuff like that. But yeah, if you don't want to buy the PS5 version, this is the way to go anyway. But yeah, The Last of Us Remastered is absolutely awesome. One of the best games ever, one of the best stories ever told in video games, in my opinion. But yeah, it's fucking awesome. To follow The Last of Us, we have The Last of Us Part 2. I have not seen so much vitriol and hatred being pushed onto a game as much as this one. There is story elements that you may not particularly like. I thought they were fine for what the first game showed us about the world and about the world building and the people in this, you know, post-apocalyptic world. You're going to expect things to happen. You're going to expect things to happen that you're not going to like, because the world they showcase in these two games is not a nice place to be. So based on that, it's cruel, it's brutal, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. But everything about this game, I absolutely adore it. It takes risks in its storytelling. It really does take major risks in its storytelling. And that's the major contention from people. They don't like where they took the story. You are allowed not to like the storyline. But when people say this is the worst writing in video game history, have you taken English? Like, it's not easy to write stuff. And I feel like this game is exceptionally well written. Like, the writing is fucking fantastic. This game is all about the pitfalls and the consequences of trying to follow the path of revenge, and how, you know, at the end of your quest, you may end up having less than you started with. And this game tells that kind of cycle of revenge in such a great way. Cycle of revenge, cycle of violence. It always ends badly for whoever is involved. And I feel we see that with Ellie in this. I don't really want to go into story plot details in case people haven't played this yet, because I feel like it's a game that people need to experience, because I think it's fantastic. I am dying for part 3 to come out, because the way this ends, there is going to be a part 3 for definite. I think this franchise needs to end on a trilogy, and I think it might be one of the greatest trilogies of games ever if they nail the third game. Lots of people will disagree with me in the comments for this, but I think this is on par with the first game. Maybe not as engaging character-wise, because there is a point in this game where you are transitioning over to a character that nobody fucking liked. I grew to like the character, but I digress. But yeah, maybe not as endearing character relationship-wise, but in terms of just overall mechanic, gameplay, and the general story they tell, I think this is still one of the best games on the platform, and it's still, to me, it's a 10 out of 10 game. I'm looking forward to replaying this on PS5, because this game just blew me away when it came out, and I've never understood. Well, I kind of understood the hatred to a point, because there is story elements that I can understand people not liking, but I've never understood why this game got so low scores when the game as a game is incredible. Anyway, that is Last of Us Part 2. Now we move on to my ridiculous Resident Evil collection for PS4. I'm on this quest to get every Resident Evil game physically for PS4. The only one I'm missing at the moment is Resident Evil 4 Remake. I do have that on Xbox, but I do plan to get the PS4 version just as a memento to have this full collection on PS4. It's kind of like a weird OCD kind of, it just makes me happy that I've got these games available to play whenever I want to. Especially now I've got a PS5, they're all backwards compatible, which is amazing. It's kicking off though with Resident Evil the Origins collection. This includes Resident Evil the GameCube Remake Remastered and Resident Evil 0 Remastered. Resident Evil Remake from the GameCube is one of my favourite games of all time. I absolutely adore it, and playing through it on the PS4 in high definition, I put in maybe like 15-20 hours into my first playthrough of that. It's still one of the best horror games ever made, in my opinion. Absolutely amazing. Taking that rough and ready version on the PlayStation 1, which I still love the original PlayStation version, and bringing it so much up to date. It's pretty much the same game as the PS1 version, but it's got lush graphics, some added mechanical depth in there as well, definitely some added horror and added threat in there as well, with such as the Crimson Heads and things like that. Resident Evil Remake is absolutely one of the best games ever, and I fucking adore it. Resident Evil 0 is when we kind of trip over our feet a little bit, because I've never liked it. I've never liked Resident Evil 0. I feel like it was kind of almost like, well, we've made Resident Evil Remake, let's quickly make a prequel to that in the same engine and kind of try and capitalise on that momentum, which is fine. You know, you want to capitalise on momentum when something's doing well, of course. But yeah, with Resident Evil 0, I felt like it was kind of a half-baked attempt at a prequel. I understand, you know, you want to know where Rebecca Chambers was prior to her appearance in the first Resident Evil game, but I feel like this kind of muddies the water, and I think there's quite a lot of plot holes in there as well in terms of narrative. And when you get into the mansion in Resident Evil 0, it's almost like unrecognisable to the mansion in Resident Evil Remake, which is kind of almost like a contradiction, a very, very big kind of retcon almost to the layout of the mansion, which is really annoying because you'd want it to sync up nicely with the Resident Evil 1 Remake. But anyway, I digress. It's really nice to get these as a double pack on physical, because I still think they're just still cool games to play. I might jump into Resident Evil 0 again and actually might find myself enjoying it this time around. Who knows? But yeah, Resident Evil 1 Remake is one of the best games ever, and I love it. That's Resident Evil, the Origins Collection. Moving on, we have Resident Evil 2 Remake. Probably one of the best examples of a remake done absolutely to perfection. I was super hyped for this game. This game was in development hell. Not so much development hell, it was more so like it was whispered about for years and years, ever since the GameCube remake of Resident Evil 1, because people thought they were going to follow suit and, you know, move over to Resident Evil 2 and give us that same kind of style. So bringing this Resident Evil 2 remake in 2019, I was all over it because it felt like I've been waiting fucking decades for this game. But yeah, it's so well done. The new RE engine is a marvel to look at. The new Gore engine is fucking just savage and vicious and visceral and nasty. And the game, and you know, the game itself is fairly the same as the original PS1 version, but obviously the graphics are nicer, the story is kind of a bit more kind of involved, and the layout of the RPD is slightly different, of course, but it's all over the shoulder a la Resident Evil 4, and it's just a perfect remake for me. That's Resident Evil 2 Remake. It moves over to a game I have not got around to playing because the reviews put me off. I didn't get this, I got this a long time, about maybe a year after it came out, and that is Resident Evil 3 Remake. I've not played this yet. I've heard that it's not very good. I've heard that you can beat it in 45 minutes if you're very good at speedrunning stuff. Especially when you've got some of the unlockable weapons like the rocket launcher, you can just run this through really quickly. I'm on two minds of this because the original Resident Evil 3 is probably one of the most nostalgic games from the PS1 for me. It's not my favourite Resident Evil, but it's the most nostalgic for me in terms of Resident Evil. I'm in two minds because from what I remember, the original Resident Evil 3, it was a shorter experience. It was more focused on action. It was less focused on, you know, survival horror. And this game sounds that it's a shorter experience. It's more focused on action and stuff like that. So it seems like it lines up fairly well from what I can tell. But the one thing that really puts me off this is that Nemesis is not a procedurally generated threat. In the original Resident Evil 3, he would just turn up whenever he felt like it and just cause you havoc. In this, from what I've heard from people, there are just set pieces in the game where he will always show up, and at this point in the game it's like a set piece, like predetermined set piece that he will be there. I'm looking forward to checking this out regardless because I love Resident Evil, and I'm just been so busy with stuff I've just never been able to check it out. Not having a PS4 anymore kind of doesn't help either because I can't play it, but now I've got a PS5 I can really jump into these games that I've just kind of let be forgotten sitting there in my collection gathering dust. But that's Resident Evil 3 Remake. Moving on to the PS4 re-release of Resident Evil 4, a game that probably is on nearly every system at this point. It got re-released to death. I'm not the biggest fan of Resident Evil 4, as most people would be these days. I do feel like it's not overrated, but I feel like it's just maybe not as good as people would led you to believe, unfortunately. It's not the greatest game of all time. It's not a 10 out of 10 for me. I think it's fine. It might be a good strong 7 or 8 out of 10. I do think it's very good. I do have my enjoyment from it. But at the time, when I got it on GameCube when it originally came out, I felt like it was just such a departure from the original Resident Evil trilogy that it kind of like, it made me had this weird kind of vibe for it where, you know, I do like it, but I kind of don't like it at the same time. It is what it is, I suppose. Like, you know, I wanted to be old school Umbrella T-Virus zombies, and they gave us this weird kind of Lust Plagas virus. I tried to play this when I last had a PS4, and I felt like the controls had dated somewhat, so it felt kind of stiff and weird to play. So I'm looking forward to dive into the remake, because that might, you know, update the controls a bit better and be more fluid and a bit more easier to play. But that's Resident Evil 4, the re-release for PS4. I'm going to get lots of hate for this one, guys. Resident Evil 5, the re-release for PS4. I like this game more than Resident Evil 4. I know. Angry comments. Do it. But I had a blast with this one. I had, you know, I think I was more accepting of the idea of, you know, Resident Evil going into action. And this one, I feel like it's just, I think it was loads of fun. I think it looked great for the time. I think it played great for the time. When you play in co-op, is the way to play this game, is in co-op, because it's so much fun. Mercenaries modes was a blast. Yeah, I had a great time. This game has such great replay value as well. Being able to go back in it and buying like infinite ammo and some of the weapons, you know, give infinite ammo for certain weapons, and just be able to fly through the game and just be an absolute just monster badass in it is so much fun. Who can't love Chris Redfield punching a boulder? There's something so hammy and over the top and campy about this one that I just find it hilariously fun. It's great fun, and I think it's held up as well on PS4 from what I remember playing it when this re-release came out. Really looking forward to jumping into this one again when I feel like it. It has all the DLC as well, so I don't think I played any of the DLC stuff, so that would be really nice to actually delve into as well. That's Resident Evil 5. The hate comments will be brewing because I like this more than Resident Evil 4. Not sorry. No, I'm not sorry, guys. That's Resident Evil 5. Moving over to probably the most hated Resident Evil game, and that is Resident Evil 6. I remember being quite excited for this one because I played the demo, the Leon demo, and it felt more old school in that demo. And I think I only ever finished Leon's campaign when I got this game, because towards the end of this campaign it became the most infuriating and frustrating piece of shit game ever. Quick time events galore, just awful boss fights, just dreadfulness. Jumping over to the Chris campaign, it was even worse. I think I played a little bit of the Jake Wesker's son. Terrible. And I never unlocked the Ada campaign. So yeah, this one is not good. It feels rough. It's just over the top Michael Bayisms where it's like bruh, throw everything at the screen at you. Where I said, you know, taking Resident Evil into action with Resident Evil 5, and that did it well. Like, it has a good balance of that horror and action in there. They went too far with this one. They were trying to please too many fans of the franchise. They tried to give us the action in there. They tried to give us the horror in there. But it was trying to tick off too many boxes and please too many people. It just became like a homunculi of absolute just awful game decisions for me. But yeah, I probably will go back to this one eventually and see how I feel about it after all these years. But Resident Evil 6, it's not very good, I suppose, right? But yeah, I've got it anyway to complete the collection. Brings us to, in my opinion, one of the greatest games for the PS4. I adore this game. I think it's one of the best Resident Evil games ever made. It's up there in my top 3 easily, guys. That is Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. This game has everything I wanted for it. A brand new refresh with the first person's perspective. I think I gave it tons of value, tons of new ideas to create horror around. It's just so well done. It still has the great item management and combat that you'd expect from the old school Resident Evil games. And damn, did this game just ooze atmosphere for me. Did I find it particularly scary? Not really, but I'm a guy that's been playing horror games for years, and this kind of horror doesn't really scare me that much. But if you put on a game like Amnesia, that's when I shit my pants. So it's a bit different of the scares there. This one is more kind of like a It's got that Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe to it. It does turn into crazy, really convoluted Resident Evil plot points towards the end of the game. But for a Resident Evil reboot and a complete refresh, this is exactly what I was hoping for, something like this. It's not Umbrella, it's not T-Virus, it's not zombies, but it's got all the DNA there from the original Resident Evil games that I just I adore this one. And I'm looking forward to jumping into this and giving this a revisit very soon down the line. This is, to me, one of the best games on PS4. It's one of the best Resident Evil games ever made. I adore this one. That's Resident Evil 7, Biohazard. Moving over to the most recent Resident Evil title in the franchise. That is Resident Evil 8 Village, or just Village Resident Evil. I did have this on Xbox for ages, never got around to playing it, but because I can put this in my PS5 and get all the upgrades and that for free, I thought I'll sell my Xbox version and just get around to playing this one in due course, I suppose. We're going to move over to some of the spin-off games, some really good ones actually. So we got Resident Evil Revelations. This is a great Resident Evil title. You're Jill Valentine, you're on a boat, and you've got these weird kind of homunculi kind of monsters you've got to face off. Really good Resident Evil game. I mentioned about a game on my Project PS2 collection called Cold Fear. It's pretty much Resident Evil 4 on a boat. I think they might have like taken little cues from that one and gave us an actual Resident Evil on a boat. But yeah, this one is great. It originally came out on the Nintendo 3DS, but then it got an HD re-released on PS4, and it's just, I think it's a great re-release and a really good like side game, like, you know, spin-off game. It's really good. I recommend it. Resident Evil Revelations. And we've got its sequel, Resident Evil Revelations 2. I don't think this one is as strong as the first game. I think it's fine. It did come out episodically, which is a bit of a bummer, because it's why I've got the physical version, because it's all on one disc. Yeah, this one is a bit hit and miss. I found myself getting kind of bored very quickly in this one. I didn't think it was as engaging as the first Revelations game. That is the last title in my Resident Evil collection for PS4. I'm really happy to have all of these titles on one machine. It's just nice. It's a nice kind of OCD pleasing, just all the PS4 spines along the sides. That brings us my last game for PS4. Recent pickup, you've seen it in the video, Death Stranding. Not got around to playing that yet, but it is a game that I'm very intrigued by. And yeah, it could be really fun, and it could be ultimately really weird as well, because Hideo Kojima is a weird motherfucker. But yeah, Death Stranding. So that is the collection as it stands, guys, for PS4. Mostly Resident Evil titles, of course, but I do love myself some Resident Evil survival horror. Picked up that game called Tormented Souls on PS5, which is meant to be that kind of Resident Evil horror kind of title. But I'm going to throw out some games that I highly recommend on PS4 and what I think are the best in the generation. Doom Eternal, must own, it's awesome. Firewatch, one of my favourite story-driven games of all time. Witcher 3, it might be the best RPG of the generation. Bloodborne, what an awesome kind of Victorian Gothic Souls-like that I think I actually like more than the Dark Souls series. Spider-Man, that was a really good open world game, loved it to pieces. I want to get Miles Morales, I've not played that yet, but that looks really cool. But those are just a handful of games that I can remember off the top of my head for PS4 that I would highly recommend you check out. If I've missed a bunch, I probably have. Drop them in the comments down below. Let me know what your recommendations for the PS4 generation is. As always, guys, let me know any and all of your comments down below. And as always, let's continue to build a games collection.